Lord, Lord, open unto me. Open unto me light for my darkness. Open unto me courage for my fear. Open unto me hope for my despair. Open unto me peace for my turmoil. Open unto me joy for my sorrow. Open unto me strength for my weakness. Open unto me wisdom for my confusion. Open unto me forgiveness for my sins. Open unto me tenderness for my toughness. Open unto me love for my hates. Open unto me thyself for myself. Lord, Lord, open unto me.
We live in tough times. We've arrived in tough times. We have been sheltering in place for about 4 months, and it looks like we might be sheltering in place for even longer. I know the phases are coming out. We've gone from phase 1A to 2, and some people are talking about going into phase 3. Yet at the very same time, as we see across the nation, the positive tests for the virus continue not just to go up, but to escalate up. It's getting away from us. And we don't quite know exactly what that means. What we do know is that what we thought maybe was just going to be a seasonal affliction with a little bit of a break, giving us time to ramp up, to do better management and control in the fall. We know that that's not going to happen. There was no break. There's not going to be a break. We Americans simply aren't that disciplined to stay indoors, and we live in such a tough time that we cannot trust those elected leaders, particularly our president, particularly the Republican Party, who continually give us misinformation about the effects and the growth and the danger of this virus. We have made in this country a political statement out of a health concern over wearing or not wearing masks. That just doesn't come up out of nowhere. That was built like you build a fire, starting with kindling and building up, and now it's a roaring blaze. We can't find a common voice. We can't find common ground. We can't find common sense. We are living in tough times, and it will be the death of people, and it will be the destruction of many others. And so we find ourselves sheltering in place, kinda. But what we do find ourselves, for sure, I think just about all of us, is we're living in lives of tremendous fear and trepidation and anxiety. What's next? Will this end? What can I do? The question that I want to raise in this time is, how do we keep going? What keeps you going? We could distract ourselves in those first couple months, I think fairly easily, with Netflix and watching documentaries and cleaning up our house. And when the weather turned a little better, we probably had the best looking yards we've had ever. But that time has passed now too. And it's not so much that we're facing boredom, although being indoors certainly can be boring after a while, and not getting out and about and not being able to visit your friends, that can be boring. But what we're really facing is this fear that this new normal is going to be the old way of life, a common way of life. And we have tremendous anxiety over how we are going to navigate this virus. Not just me as a person or us as a community, but how are we going to navigate this as a people who can't find common sense or common ground or common way? And then there's the anxiety of our whole entire nation coming undone, of democracy itself under siege. And what that does to us as a people is it causes psychic trauma. And psychic trauma causes literally the brain that is overwhelmed to shut down, to become passive and withdrawn, sullen, bitter, disappointed, but mostly depowered. Just what some folks want: a passive people to simply roll over, so that their power can become dominant. What keeps us going? What keeps building in our lives resilience in a time of crisis and trauma? What builds in our life positive perspective, positive empowerment during a time of crisis, of psychic trauma, of constant assault? I want to lift up exercise as one of the gifts of the church. A commitment to your body, which houses the temple of Holy Spirit. And I want to encourage all of us to have some form of embodied practice, to simply keep awake and to keep alert, to build resilience, to build courage. And what I'm talking about is not simply clean and healthy hygiene habits during a virus, but I'm talking about moving your body, getting out, going for walks, or if you are housebound, doing whatever form of exercise you can that moves your arms and moves your legs and gets your heart rate up a little bit and gets your lungs breathing in and out, to stay alive, to be alive, to come alive, to put your body into everyday practice of your life. And I want to encourage you to exercise your mind, to shake away the doldrums, to shake away what I would call COVID brain, because COVID brain is what I've been calling, I mean, some of us are dealing with this maybe more than others, but it's that lack, it's that feeling that you can't focus. You might be a reader, for example, but after 4 or 5 pages, you just find your mind wandering, or you forget everything that you've read. Now, some of that's kind of normal. Sometimes that's tied into aging. But what I'm really talking about is this kind of, because I keep picking it up from folks that I talk with, is the inability to retain knowledge, the inability to stay focused. I believe that something that is happening to us is that we are simply being overwhelmed by the onslaught of negativity that are the inputs of our life these days. And our brains shut down. And so a practice, a counter, a protest to our brains shutting down is to, with intention and purpose, towards a goal to exercise our mind. And this can be done intellectually, not simply by reading, but reading for purpose, reading with intention. It can be done creatively through various forms of artistic expression. Or it can be done also through the creativity of daily life, of going into the kitchen, not simply putting some hot dogs in boiling water for a hot dog feast later, but creating some succulent feast that you never would on your own even attempt, but to apply your mind to something complex and stimulating, and at least with cooking, with a wonderful reward. Cultivating, exercising our mind, cultivating, exercising our body, are powerful practices in a time of trauma and a time of fear and anxiety. And where do we learn this? If you want to know more about it, listen to those who have been imprisoned. Also, a situation of being overwhelmed by violence and negative stimuli. Exercising of your body, exercising of your mind are crucial if you are to come alive in a time of psychic trauma. And of course, being the church, we have a few tricks up our sleeve about cultivating our souls, cultivating a life of prayer. Prayer is one of those things that can only be learned by doing. And it can only be learned by doing because it's actually pretty hard to do. God is invisible. And God is that power greater than ourselves that we cannot control, nor can we manipulate. We can't force God to perform like a puppet on our strings. We can't force, manipulate, structure God's existence in such a way that we get the result we want. We are in a dependent relationship with a power greater than ourselves in the faith that God's presence, personal presence, will show up within us and around us in mysterious ways to empower us to overcome the negativity all around us. What it means to live in faith, or at least one thing that it means to live, one way that it means to live in faith, is to cultivate a practice of praying to the invisible God whom you cannot control or manipulate. A God that you are dependent upon. A God that you bend the knee to, not the one that bends the knee to you. Prayer can only be learned by doing. And so the easy thing is to talk about the form of prayer. I mean, we all know this already. To pray, to try to communicate, to have communion with the invisible God, is, first of all, to intentionally carve out some time. And I want to encourage you that when you carve out some time, and pick a place when you carve out that time, and simply sit. I think prayer begins simply by sitting, relaxing your mind, relaxing your body, no agenda, no manipulations, just sit and listen. If you're outside, listen to the birds, listen to the grass, listen to the wind, just listen. And then you move into what I have often talked with us about, terms of breath prayer. You just breathe in and out. You trust the silence. You trust that by not having an agenda, a voice can be heard within you. A voice that empowers you and encourages you and even directs you. That to me is where prayer begins. I think that's the simple form of prayer. Carving out a time, picking a place, just sitting in silence, just breathing. And that might take a lifetime to master. But at some point, I would hope we would all venture out of that silence to speak a word, to articulate a word, to be intentional about a word, to learn how to intercede for others. It's important for us to think about others and to pray for others, because so often we think that the world is all about me. And sometimes we don't think this consciously, but we live as if all the sufferings of the world are my sufferings, and they're all about me. It is important to lift up others so that our world enlarges and universalizes. And so part of that carving out a place and carving out a time and sitting and listening, part of that is, or the next step of that, is to lift up those whom you care about, those whom your heart has compassion for, naming the people in your own life that you know are going through ordeals, that you know are suffering, being able to acknowledge that and to name that. In the acknowledgement, in the naming of that, quite often will come instructions as to what small, necessary blessing you have within you to offer the other. And it's not just naming those that you know, it's moving even deeper beyond that by naming those you don't know. Maybe those situations or those others that we pick up, stories through social media, through the newspaper, through talking with family and friends, but to intercede for others, to lift up to the invisible God. In the words of Kumbaya, come by here, Lord. Someone's crying, Lord. Someone needs you, Lord. Someone's hurting, Lord. Come by here. Make your presence known here. To intercede for others is a tremendous act of active love. That is something we Christians can do, even sheltering in place. And I encourage us to move deeply into a practice, an intentional, everyday practice of gratitude, of praise, of thanksgiving. To be able to intentionally acknowledge and name that which is good in your life, the grace that is sustaining you in your life, the angels who are sustaining you in life, but to be able to acknowledge and to name the good of life in the midst of this psychic assault, this trauma that is happening, not just to the nation at large, but it's happening to you. It's happening to me. This fear and insecurity and anxiety that we have. It is the practice of gratitude and praise that encourages us to see beyond the negative, to see towards new creation. I encourage us to cultivate a time of gratitude each day, and I encourage us to cultivate a time of confession. AA would call it taking a moral inventory, but especially confined, in captivity, being sheltering in place, especially for those who are partnered or families. It's hard to live together. And when you have to live together in close proximity 24/7, it becomes really difficult to negotiate and to navigate personal space and time and a place and just something away from others, something away from the responsibilities you carry. We all break down. We all become less than ideal. We all sin, and we certainly all fail one another. To be able to have a time in your life on a daily basis to review your life, that which you've done, that which you've left undone, and to simply acknowledge it, to name it, is the first step towards bringing renewal and redemption. It is the first step towards opening yourself up to be forgiven and to practice forgiveness. Those three deep movements of prayer, the practice of intercession for others, the practice of gratitude, that which is naming the good of your life, and the practice of confession, naming that which you have failed to do, that which you have avoided and left undone. All of these are crucial in creating the kind of moral center that is able to build resistance and courage in a time of psychic assault, a time of continual trauma. And we are there right now. Not that we will be there someday. We are there right now, being overwhelmed on a daily basis. This virus is not going to just go away. We can't pray it away. We can't wish it away. It's going to be with us for months. And the crazy confusion of our country isn't just going to go away. It's going to be with us for a long, long time. And as we both know, these next 6 months, leading up to the election, through the election, and after the election, we know there's going to be great volatility, probable violence, another full-throated assault on the peace and the tranquility of a nation. We know there is going to be dividers that try to rip us apart. We know there are going to be lies that confuse us. How do we resist that? How do we stay focused on the positive and the good and the redemption and the renewal of our society of our people. It begins by cultivating a life of prayer. And now that we've all seen all the Netflix we need to see, now that we've read our books, now that we've cleaned our house, now that our yards are all in order, in this mid-July, I want to encourage us to turn our attention to the practice of prayer. And for those of you who need a jump start, I encourage you to join us Tuesday mornings at 10 to begin. Amen. Okay, that was 20 minutes.
20 minutes.
In Louisville, at the corner of 4th and Walnut, at the center of the shopping district, I was suddenly overwhelmed with the realization that I loved all these people, that they were mine and I theirs, that we could not be alien to one another, even though we were total strangers. It was like waking from a dream of separateness, of spurious self-isolation in a special world. This sense of liberation from an illusory difference was such a relief and such a joy to me that I almost laughed out loud. I have the immense joy of being man, a member of a race in which God Himself became incarnate, as if the sorrows and stupidities of the human condition could overwhelm me now that I realize what we all are. And if only everybody could realize this, but it cannot be explained. There is no way of telling people that they are all walking around shining like the sun. Then it was as if I suddenly saw the secret beauty of their hearts, the depths of their hearts, where neither sin nor desire nor self-knowledge can reach the core of the reality, the person that each one is in God's eyes. If only they could all see themselves as they really are. If only we could see each other that way all the time. There would be no more war, no more hatred, no more cruelty, no more greed. But this cannot be seen, only believed and understood by a peculiar gift